Hello, and welcome to Pastor's Perspective. I'm your host, Brian Perez. It is Thursday, the 16th of July, and we are here once again in the studio, ready to answer the phones, talk to you, answer questions you might have about the Bible, the Christian faith, etc., etc. So call in. 888-564-6173 is our number, and you can also watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. In fact, if you're watching online, you'll see a QR code there. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to the Pastor's Perspective page at kwave.com, where you can fill out that form, submit it to us, and then we'll get your question. And we might use it on a future program. We primarily go to the phones here because it's a radio show and you don't want to hear me reading your questions all day long. We'd rather hear you. We like variety when it comes to voices. So call in at 888-564-6173. And answering your questions today, we've got the Pastor Emeritus of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. That would be Brian Broderson. What's up, Brian?
Well, here I am. I just brought my dog in.
Yes, I saw him. Barnabas.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to run home and pick him up real quick. And
it's Barnabas, not Barabbas.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, somebody, I can't believe they named their dog. It's like, no. Barnabas. Barnabas. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, Barnabas is here. He's waiting for a friend who's going to take him for a little walk during the broadcast here.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So here I am. Had a nice coffee meetup with a friend this morning and some good prayer and then a good lunch with another friend. So, yeah, it's a good day.
Nice. And Phil Metzger is here, too. He's the pastor of Calvary San Diego. He's joining us online. How are you, Phil? Can't hear you, Phil. Did you press mute on your microphone?
I had a couple things muted there. I was going to say I'm doing great. And I always love when I come on, I can't see what's off the camera, right? I can only see what everybody else online can see, but I can hear the guys in the studio and I can always hear, and I've never mentioned this, but I can always hear Brian coming in humming. He's always singing a little song or humming a little song.
Yes.
I never know what song.
And that's Brian Broderson, not me. Brian Broderson.
Brian Broderson.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yes.
He's always humming a song.
Or whistling or something.
Brian's there today. I know who's on the show with me. It's Brian.
And, people ask me, like, what song is that? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not even consciously thinking about it. But it's something in my DNA because one of my grandsons does the exact same thing.
Really?
He just walks around just humming, It's like, okay.
I love it.
Got that from Grandpa.
We got to keep the music going. I love it. It's great. I just was laughing at, I know Brian's on the show. Brian Broderson is coming on.
And sometimes people will say like a song. They'll go, you were, that's a song you were doing, huh? And I go, what? What song? I know. No, I wasn't.
That's funny. So here's what we'll do. Phil Metzger, as you're answering a question today, Brian will hum underneath so that we'll have music going the whole time. How's that?
Yeah, like emotional music to fill the space. It's good.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, and I'll try to pick songs that kind of go with the question too. So
that'd be wonderful. 888-564-6173 is the number to call us. I mentioned the Pastor's Perspective page at kwave.com where you can submit your questions. You can also do it by DMing us on the Pastor's Perspective Instagram, or you can use Messenger on the Pastor's Perspective Facebook page. That is what Aurora did. She is in Omaha, Nebraska. And she says, in Proverbs 31, verse 15, it reads, "She gets up before dawn." Then a few verses later, "Her lamp burns late into the night." I assume before dawn is around 5 a.m., says Aurora, and late into the night would be past 10 p.m. So if you're trying to be a Proverbs 31 woman, how would you stay up late and wake up early? Is there more context or is it symbolism for her work? I mean, doctors recommend we get 8 hours of sleep a night. So is this saying that women should not get 8 hours of sleep because they need to be constantly, what does this mean? We'll start with you, Brian. What do you say to Aurora?
Well, first of all, I just heard very recently that the 8 hours of sleep, like the 8 glasses of water a day, is a myth. And it was just sort of imposed randomly. So anyway,
Probably by the same people that say chocolate is bad for you, and then 6 months later, chocolate is good for you.
Yeah, salt is bad. No, salt is good.
Yep.
Butter is bad. No, butter is great.
Yep.
I like the butter is great people myself.
Yes.
So, yeah, I don't think that we're meant to take literally like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to stay up late past 10, and I'm supposed to get up before the sun comes up. So it's not prescriptive. It's descriptive. It's just simply saying, in this particular case, the person that the author is referring to, this is their habit. And, people are different. Some people need 8 hours of sleep, and some people function, on 4 or 5. The great revivalist John Wesley, he basically, 4 to 5 hours a night was his maximum, and he went to, I think he was 90 when he died, and he traveled tens of thousands of miles on horseback, and so it is just kind of, it varies from person to person. So it's not a like, hey, this is what you got to do. It's more just generally like the idea is she's diligent.
Yeah.
Right. That's the idea behind it. So
yeah, Phil.
Yeah, that was the word I was going to use to describe this person. This is just a person who's like, maybe I was going to say diligent, but also disciplined.
Yeah.
Just a person who has discipline in their life. It's not telling you have to get up at this time and you have to do this. It's just saying this is a person who uses the time that they have very wisely. And on behalf of the rest of us, I reject Brian's idea that we shouldn't get 8 hours of sleep. I don't get 8 hours of sleep, but my gosh, I'm jealous of people that can do that.
yeah,
I want to sleep that long. That sounds amazing.
yeah. And Phil, I'll tell you, the older you get, the less sleep you get. And it's just the way.
I'm not looking forward to that.
It's just the way it goes. Yeah. I can't sleep 8 hours to save my life. I mean, I'd love to sleep 8 hours, but it just never works out.
So what other portions of Proverbs 31 would you say? Because we've always heard about the ideal, Proverbs 31. And a lot of women have been...
The Proverbs 31 woman.
The Proverbs 31 woman, yeah, where a lot of women hear this and read this and they go, there's no way I could ever do this. And then guys might be like, well, I'm looking for that Proverbs 31 woman. Well...
Is that how they say it?
That's exactly how they say it. There's some pastors who say it like that too, but I'm not going to name names. Sorry. Sorry.
You just gave it away.
I'm going to get canceled on that radio station.
And by the way, I heard Brian Broderson humming earlier or like singing, and I got to listen to Brian Perez. Very sassy and fun today, Brian. You're in a good mood. I like it.
So it happens when you take a day off.
He's in a feisty.
Oh, were you off? Okay. Well, that's why. Yeah, I like it. Yeah. I like it a lot.
Again, we have a friend, Dominic Hernandez, professor, Old Testament professor, and he's written a book on Proverbs, and he has a whole take on Proverbs 31 that's really interesting, and it's kind of a take that's basically not the typical like, hey, gals, this is the
this is the way walking it.
This is a description of a virtuous woman, so this is what you're supposed to be. He has a whole different take on it, which I can't remember what it is, but it was just fascinating that here's a guy who's very steeped in the whole Hebrew culture and Hebrew language and everything. So again, I think it is it's sort of like it's a model. It's something to look at and kind of say, again, I think the overall point is we're talking about a woman she's wise, and she does, she uses her time wisely. She uses her money wisely. She uses her gifts wisely. And as a result of that, she is a blessing to those around her. I think that is the general gist of what Proverbs 31 is about.
I did find, the book that Dominic wrote is called Proverbs, Pathway to Wisdom, but then I found what looks like a podcast that he might have done, and the title of the podcast, Proverbs 31, is not a future wife checklist.
Well, there you have it.
So I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Aurora, thank you so much for sending in your question through the Pastor's Perspective page at kwave.com. Let's see if we can do another question that was sent in online. Oh, this one also has to do with, and that's what we answer here on the show. And this one's kind of lengthy, but just the things that we read about, like Proverbs 31, where we wonder, is this what it really means? So Janet wrote to us using Messenger on the Pastor's Perspective Facebook page. She says, growing up in church, including Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa in the 90s, I have consistently heard the woman at the well described as adulterous, promiscuous, or flirtatious with men. Does John 4 itself actually support this conclusion, or has it become a traditional interpretation that goes beyond what Scripture explicitly says? Jesus never called her an adulteress, a prostitute, or an immoral woman. In her culture, women had little control over marriage and divorce. She could have been widowed, abandoned, or divorced against her will. 5 husbands do not automatically prove promiscuity. Regarding the man she was living with, women often depended on men for financial support and protection. The man could have been a relative, a provider, a household arrangement, or, possibly a romantic relationship, but the Bible doesn't say. Jesus does not condemn her. Instead, he offers her living water, reveals himself as the Messiah, and uses her testimony to bring many Samaritans to faith. She's portrayed as spiritually thoughtful, discussing worship, Jacob's well, and the coming Messiah. John presents her as a woman engaged in theology, not defined by sexual sin. And the Bible never says she came to the well at noon because of shame. That is an interpretation, not a statement of Scripture. There could have been any reason for her to come to the well at that time. To me, it was an awesome divine appointment with her Messiah, and she was so excited that she was practically the first evangelist. I would think if she had such a horrible reputation, no one in town would listen to her because everybody already knew her business. I cannot wait to meet this woman in heaven, says Janet. So the main question, does John 4 support the conclusion that the woman was sexually promiscuous or an adulteress, etc.? Phil, what would you say to Janet?
Okay, Janet, first I want to say I love the question. I love the framing of it. And let me tell you why. You may not love my answer, but I love your question. And here's why. I love that you're doing something that like I require people around me to do and that I'm trying to do, and that is to not like associate to really like read something again with like fresh eyes, fresh ears, fresh heart, rather than just kind of like, oh, I already know what it says, and this is who that person is, and that's that. And you just kind of become like, we become almost like numb to thinking about things differently. And so I love that you did that, Janet. I hope you keep doing that. Here would be the caveat to that. Don't be afraid to circle back to the mainstream concept when your concept doesn't work. Okay, so it's like, hey, rethink the whole thing. I love that. Rethink it all. But then when it doesn't make sense, or if it doesn't make sense, then just circle right back and say, okay, let's go with the majority idea there. It is not interpretation to say that the woman was there at noon and it's because of shame or whatever. That's not the right word that I would use. That's actually like historically, culturally accurate. Like that's an educated understanding of the signs of the times. That's how women would have been with a woman who had 5 different husbands. So no, the Bible never says she is promiscuous. You're right. That's something that we have kind of maybe added to. I hadn't heard that she was called that, or a prostitute. You're right. The Bible does not say that she is those things. But what is clear is that she had moved through some husbands. How that's possible, I totally agree with you, Janet. Women didn't have a ton of rights, and it seems like somehow this gal had moved through husbands. It's obvious that when Jesus pointed these things out, there was an element of shame that caught her off guard, and that's how that conversation would unravel, and it would actually lead to her seeing Jesus as the Messiah and her going back to the village. Her being kind of on the outside and having this incredible testimony is absolutely relevant to why people listen to her. How could she be so touched and so changed by this person? Had a huge impact. So I love your passion and your interest in like seeing things differently. But in this case, I would say that the majority is probably accurate on this. She's not an adulteress or promiscuous. We don't read that. We just know she went through a lot of husbands.
Pastor Brian.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Phil. And I think on both parts. I think commending her for her, and she's heard a lot of sermons because she's kind of touched on all of the different points that you would hear in sermons on that. But I agree with Phil's conclusion. And I do think that there is a point where whatever the causes of her 5 marriages and now, living with a man she's not married to, those are the issues really. And that's where Jesus takes her there. And, she says, "Sir, give me this water." And then Jesus says, "Go call your husband." Why would Jesus say, "Go call your husband"? That doesn't have anything to do with it. Mm-hmm. Unless this is the issue that Jesus wants to put his finger on, which I think it clearly is. "Sir, I don't have a husband." "Oh, you're right. You don't. You've had 5, and the man you're living with now is not your husband." So Jesus is this just part of the conversation? He just wants to kind of talk to her and let her know, like, "Hey, I know a little bit about you." No, I think clearly, because her response then is, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers," now remember, this is not a Jew. This woman is a Samaritan. So, you're kind of almost, I think, framing her a little bit more in a Jewish context than in a Samaritan context. So she's not a Jew. She's a Samaritan. And that's why everybody's marveling in the first place. Why is Jesus, he's not only talking to a woman, but he's talking to a Samaritan woman. So she's a Samaritan. And then she automatically goes for kind of the religious card. Well, look, our fathers say that we should worship in this mountain. This is Mount Gerizim. And you Jews say that we should worship in Jerusalem. So she herself, I think, her reaction shows that she was convicted because she looks for a way out, which is like, I don't even, this whole religious thing's kind of confusing. And then this is where Jesus says, you worship what you do not know. Salvation is of the Jews. There's coming a day when you will worship the Father neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem, for God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. And then, she said, well, we know that when the Messiah comes, because the Samaritans did have a messianic hope as well, we know that when the Messiah comes, he will teach us everything. Jesus said, "I who speak to you am he." I love that. Mm-hmm. First clear statement regarding his messiahship is to this woman. "I am the Messiah," he says. I love it.
Janet, thank you so much for sending in your question through the Pastor's Perspective page. No, through the Pastor's Perspective Facebook page using Messenger. 888-564-6173 is the number to call if you want to get a hold of Pastors Brian Broderson and Phil Metzger. They're going to be here until 4 o'clock. Let's go to Roxy in Chino, who listens to us on the K-Wave app. Hey there, Roxy. Thanks for downloading the app, and thanks for calling Pastor's Perspective today.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for having me. I've been a long-time listener since the 90s.
Wow.
So it's been 30 years of listening, and I love it. I enjoy your show.
Wow, that is a lot of listening.
Regarding, it's a long time. It's a long time. And I love it. I've gotten a lot of guidance from you guys, so thank you so very much for making your show available. I have a question regarding Noah's Ark, Sodom and Gomorrah, and present time. So if we look at Noah's Ark, we see that at the time that Noah is saved, there are 8 billion people in the world, and approximately 8 people that received salvation through the ark, that were able to escape the flood. If we look to Sodom and Gomorrah, it was only Lot and his family that were actually in the city that were pulled out, that were saved, and the wife didn't make it. So there was a small amount, a handful of people that made it. When we read the word, there's, of course, other passages where it says, that large is the gate that leadeth to destruction, wide, and then narrow is the gate that leads to salvation. Then we read about many being called and few being chosen. And I understand that Noah's Ark and Sodom and Gomorrah were pre-Christ, they were pre-grace. I understand that, but I believe those stories are kind of referencing or pointing to the rapture. How do we take comfort in knowing ourselves that more than 8 people will be saved this time? Because we consider that when the Lord comes back, that the world is going to know that we're gone. But if only 8 were saved and only a handful were saved in Sodom and Gomorrah. How can we share with believers that this time around it's not 8, not 10, it's a greater number? Because the Bible even says, will I find any faithful on that day? So the way that we live nowadays, it's difficult, and so many don't walk correctly. So what is our view supposed to be on those last days and the return of Christ? How do we know so many are going?
Another great question. This is a great episode of Pastor's Perspective today. But all right, who wants to go first on this one?
So the question is like the numbers of people. So there's
so like in Noah's Ark, there were only
8.
a few, 8, and then Sodom and Gomorrah, again, just a few. So is that saying that maybe in the rapture, it might just be a few also? What if it's only 10?
I mean, I think in some, you can look at Noah's story. Actually, no, I'm trying to say here. Eschatologically, people look at Noah to support an idea of a post-tribulational rapture. They don't see the Noah's flood and the ark as a rapture. They see the church being protected through the tribulation. That's what happens in the ark. Noah is spared from the flood by being inside the ark. So Sodom and Gomorrah, maybe a bit of a different thing. I think you can kind of calculate yourself in one sense, not accurately, at least, to the hundreds or thousands. But I think it's safe to say that every true believer in Jesus will be raptured when the rapture comes. I don't believe there's such a thing as like a partial rapture where only the really, really godly Christians go. I just think that's a wrong idea, because you're either a Christian or you're not a Christian. You're either in the body or you're not in the body. There's no sort of halfway position. So, okay, let's just say there's obviously millions of genuine Christians in the world today. The Christian population, if you just look at all of the denominations, Orthodoxy, Catholicism, Protestantism, and so forth. I mean, what is it, like 1.5 billion Christians in the world? Well, we know that there aren't 1.5 billion people who are actually biblical Christians in the sense that we read about in Scripture. But there are millions of Christians in the world. I think it's safe to say that. So that's kind of the way I would look at it myself. Phil, what do you think?
Yeah, and I totally agree. Oh, goodness. I'm always knocking over my microphone here. I get too excited.
You're getting excited over there.
Yeah, it's right on the edge, and I got so excited. I would also say, just to kind of keep the imagery here, Noah's Ark, Sodom and Gomorrah, these are not I wouldn't correlate them with rapture. I would correlate them more with salvation, which is making your case even stronger, Roxy, and I don't mean to, but I am, in the sense that if you want to look at this isn't even about Noah's Ark is a picture of salvation, redemption. And the point, as Brian said, and I totally agree, is not that the number is going to be so small, it's almost it's invisible, but more that it's so few who come into faith is the concept. That doesn't mean that we're going to end up with only 8 or 10 or 15. It's probably in the millions and millions. Thank the Lord. That's been the whole goal, right? Since the beginning of the world, so that people would know Christ. And so, but I actually wouldn't parallel this with the rapture. I would parallel this with salvation. The rapture is not our salvation. The rapture is Jesus coming back for those who are born again. And so I would connect it more to the issue of redemption. And even then, the point is not, it'll be a tiny number. It's just that there are less people born again than are not born again.
That's very true. And I'm not sure if it's on this program. I heard it in another service, but I heard a preaching on Sodom and Gomorrah. And I even find it interesting that the Lord had to pull Lot out, because Lot was living not such a right way. Lot was not, he's more of a grace that the Lord pulled him out by grace, because he had gotten so deep in the culture. Yeah. So when I think about Lot, I do think, well, this is a story of grace also, because Were it not for the Lord literally going in and just about pulling him out, he wouldn't have made it. So sometimes I just stay in the where are we at now and what does it mean? But when you speak in terms of salvation and accepting your Lord, I hear accepting the Lord. I hear what you're saying. It's more because so many are not believers, or so many are not. And if you look at it just in the realm of people that have lived overall on the earth, how few have truly believed. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that takes you back to the statement of Jesus. Broad is the road that leads to destruction. Narrow is the way that leads to life. So in the overall picture of history, there will be many more people that end up perishing by their own choice than those who end up being saved. I think that's the point. And yeah, I mean, we, like we said, there's millions of Christians in the world, but there's billions of people in the world. So that's a big difference between millions and billions.
Mm-hmm. Phil? Oh, I'm sorry. I misinterpreted your signals. I thought you wanted to add
I was just like, yeah, that's good.
You're nodding your head, agreeing with Brian. I thought you were saying, yes, I want to say something. That's all right.
Fault.
That's all right. Roxy, thank you for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173 is the number that you can call, and we're going to be here for another 30 minutes. So grab an open line, 888-564-6173. Here's another one that was sent in online. It's from Lydia before we go to the break. Lydia on Instagram basically just wants to know what the Bible says about sound baths. Is it okay to participate in a sound bath? Now, I had to look it up because I wasn't entirely sure what a sound bath is. So here's what AI told me. And I don't like using AI, but for things like this, maybe just to get a brief summary of what these things are about.
That's what AI is for.
That's what AI is for. That's what Google's for, too. AI is basically Google on steroids. But anyway, a sound bath is a deeply immersive, meditative experience where you lie down and bathe in the resonant sound waves produced by instruments like crystal singing bowls, gongs, and chimes. It's an effective way to down-regulate your nervous system, reduce stress, and guide your brain into relaxed alpha and theta states. Here are some excellent options and local ways to experience a sound bath in Santa Ana. Well, I'm not going to go there right now, but anyway.
Are you... it sounds like you're actually working for these guys. That was a great.
That was an advertisement.
That was a great ad.
Well, thank you. My voiceover career. It's finally taking off in the sound bath area. Anyway.
Well, I would imagine that if anybody, between the three of us, if anybody has experienced a sound bath, that it would be Phil because.
I just came out from one earlier. Yes. I had never heard of this before. I mean, listen, okay, I'll stop joking, but it still makes me laugh. If it's not a spiritual thing, it's just like some physical thing, great, go after it, whatever. If it's like meant to be, it's like a yoga or like a whole bunch of things. Like there's this whole other element to yoga that like you can YouTube like beginning yoga and there's no mention of spirituality, no prayers, no nothing. It's just like a bunch of hard to do stretches. And that'll put you in pain, right? And so you go, oh man, yoga's great. But then others are like, oh, I've been to a yoga class and they're talking about this, that, and the other. The point is sound baths, I don't know, some people are big into the idea of like sound waves bringing healing and resonance and all that. I think when it gets into like a kind of like a false spirituality, that's a concern. But then again, I think of like, God's the creator of all things. And so if like, I don't know, certain like frequencies people love, they hear certain frequencies. Oh, or like the, what is that thing when the ASMR, when people like whisper and they get really close and they do. Oh, I hate that stuff so much. It just creeps me out. Oh, my wife loves it and I just run from the room. So I think sound has impact on people. And if you're into sound baths and it's not spiritual, have at it.
Well, that's very interesting, Phil. I'm glid you said that. I'm going to just want to get right up in your ear and touch.
That's right.
Those like where they scratch?
Lydia, thank you for sending in your question
I
through
have a comment
Instagram.
about it when we come back.
Oh, you do?
Yes, because I have an experience with it.
You do?
I do.
All right.
And you made me go first.
I wanted to see if it was okay if I shared my experience.
All right, that's a cliffhanger. We'll find out what Pastor Brian experienced in a sound bath. Next on Pastor's Perspective. Hi, Phil Metzger from Calvary San Diego. Thanks for coming back into the studio. And Brian Broderson is here with me in this studio. And we're talking about sound baths and what it means to, I don't know, do you get all wet with sound? What does that even mean? I have no idea. But do you need soap?
No soap necessary. There's no water necessary, actually. Yeah, no, so I had an experience with this where there is a woman that I met who is a Christian, and she does this thing with crystals where she plays them, and so it is this music, and the idea is to sort of set the mood, kind of calm the room, type of a thing, and she's a believer, and she believes that this is really helpful for people. She's not saying that there's anything spiritual about it in the sense that we should be concerned. But I did have the experience, and I mean, it wasn't like I had some deep experience of, oh my gosh, I'm being cleansed, or I'm really resonating with what's happening here. But at the same time, I thought it was a pleasant thing for the moment.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. Thank you, Lydia, for sending in your question through the Pastor's Perspective Instagram by DMing us. That is another way that you can get your question to us. We prefer for you to call, though. 888-564-6173 is the number. And here's another question that was sent in on Facebook Messenger. This one, the submitter chose to remain anonymous, which is fine. You can do that. But this person says, my friend from church keeps having dreams of his wife cheating on him. I gave him some different scriptures and told him to pray and ask God to clear his mind and clean his mind. Pastors, can you give me any other advice or suggestions to help his thoughts? Phil, what would you say to our listener? Phil's experiencing a sound issue right now.
Sound barrier. No. I would say, golly, it's interesting. We had a caller, Brian, both Brian's, was talking about a friend whose situation, and I kind of had mentioned to them that, like, it's hard to have grace for somebody else's situation, and I think they even wrote back in to say, hey, thanks for that, and it was a good conversation, and I'm just thinking of that in the context of this right here too. It's like, I think the best thing you could do, like, is to pray for your friend, and support them, and maybe even encourage them to, like, the Bible tells us to, like, whatever things are pure and whatever things are true, right? And then Philippians, the Apostle Paul writes a few other things that he mentions, but I want to highlight that, like, we want to live in what is true and not give so much stock to, like, a dream about something. Now, again, there's probably a lot more going on. I have no idea. This is a very short question with a very big kind of ramifications. So I would just say, like, in any normal context, if I had a random dream that I thought my wife was cheating on me, you know what I do? I'd say, that's totally demonic. That is so, like, evil and demonic, and God just cleanse my heart of those things. I didn't create that, but Lord, just let that get away from me. I don't know the situation that they're in. I would encourage you to pray for your friend and help them to dwell on what is true. That's in Philippians. So help them to dwell on what is true.
All right. Any thoughts, Brian?
No, that's great.
All right. Here's another question submitted online. This one is from Scott, who writes, I had a question about Joshua. Can you shed some light on if the same location Joshua crossed the Jordan could be the same location as John baptized Jesus? So many parallels here, says Scott. My mind is blown. God is so amazing and weaves everything together so incredibly. What a powerful, amazing God we serve. Indeed, Scott. But yeah, is it the same location, Brian? What do you think?
Well, we know that Joshua and the children of Israel, we know they crossed basically at Jericho. So Jericho, sits on the Jordan. I mean, off the Jordan, but near the Jordan. So they crossed. They came across, and were at Jericho. We are told about the place that Jesus or John was baptizing. But I don't know that anybody actually knows where that place actually was, because it doesn't seem like it was it wasn't a town or a city. It was just an area that was designated by this particular name. So there is a place on the Jordan near to the near to the present city of Jericho that many people believe is the place. And so there is, if you're a Calvary Chapel person, you go to the Yardent up in at the, right when the Galilee pours into the Jordan. And that's the baptismal spot there that all Calvary people go to, because Calvary had a hand in developing that site. But everybody else in the world, not everybody else, but lots of other people will go to the more traditional site, which is closer to Jericho, which they would then say, this is the actual place where Jesus baptized. But nobody really knows, or where John baptized and where Jesus was baptized.
Yeah.
So I've been to that spot, but like I said.
Isn't it cool how you can see across to the people on the other side, too?
Yes.
It's like there's like the two countries kind of
the two
meet
countries right there. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say how people can see a cross. I thought you meant a cross. I'm like, then that must definitely be the place if you can see a cross there.
If there's a cross, it has to be the...
Yes.
Go ahead, Brian.
No, I just think I probably should just open my Bible and I could find the name of it, because the name is given in John's Gospel. But go ahead, Phil, and I'll... No,
you mean that, like, it was... it says it was across from Bethany, near the Jordan. Isn't that the one in John's Gospel?
Yeah, but there's one later. What is it, in chapter 12?
Mm-hmm. I thought that's where I was looking. Oh, no, I can't find it, of course.
Well, while Brian is looking that up...
I'm thinking of the one in John earlier where it says Bethany beyond the Jordan.
Yes.
Well, okay, while you're looking for that, what I was going to say is, like, the idea, like, that it's the same place to the specific exact, nobody could know, no way of knowing. But the general idea, there's nothing like, there's quite a lot of scholarship that says it's in the same general idea, both Joshua and John's baptisms. Because you're talking about a river. So like there's like specific places where these things would happen, and it says it's near. So you're already eliminating a lot of the Jordan River when you say it happened near Jericho and then also like across from Bethany of Jordan. This limits the geography tremendously. So if you wanted to say that it's within a, X amount of mile radius possibility, then you're absolutely okay to say that. In terms of exactly, that would be totally impossible to do. While Brian's still finishing, one more thing I wanted to say was, yes, we do a lot of baptisms up at the yard up in the north. But my favorite thing that we would do with Bible college students was, instead of baptizing there, we would go whitewater rafting, like down the river there, and then at the end of it have a baptism, which was such a fun experience. The area over across in the south. The other one where a lot of people go, it's a really beautiful area as well. Very fascinating.
Did you find it?
Well, I found it, but it doesn't say what I thought it said.
Maybe a different translation? Or?
The place is Ephraim. Jesus went there before the triumphal entry and after the resurrection of Lazarus. But for some reason, I was thinking there is another passage. I just can't think of where it is that makes a reference to where John had been baptizing. But yeah, but
okay.
Like Phil said, and nobody knows exactly where.
Mm-hmm. All right, Scott. Thank you so much for sending in your question through the Pastor's Perspective page using Messenger, and the Pastor's Perspective Facebook page using Messenger. I always forget to leave that out. Okay. Here's another one. This is from Maria, who did use the Pastor's Perspective page at kwave.com. She's in Moreno Valley, and she writes, "My question today is about my niece. She wants to be called a man's name rather than her name. How do I handle this situation? Should I continue to lead by example, but call her by the man's name?" What do you think, Phil?
Well, this is such a bummer of a question in terms of like not being able to talk to the person to get more details, because this is like how old is your niece? Is this like a little kid wanting to, and I'm not trying to be silly, like it should be obvious, but it's not. Is it a little kid saying, I want to be called this? Or is this like a grown adult niece who's saying, I am, this person? The way that the person wrote the question, whoever this is, Maria, it sounds like it's like an adult kind of a thing, or like an emerging adult kind of a thing. Should I continue? But even just this, like, should I continue to lead by example, but call her by the man name? I think these are tricky ones, man. You're going to hear in the evangelical world, the Christian world, you're going to hear both sides of that. There's some great scholarly, research and proponents of out of Wheaton that are saying, yeah, definitely, it's okay to use the person's name if it's agreed upon that this is, on the other hand, if this is like delusional and it could lead to like a, this is kind of more psychosis, you want to be careful to not do that. So I would, a lot of times in like this same person at Wheaton has talked about doing counseling for people in these kinds of situations where he'll say, let's agree to a name that you all, like a nickname that you used to have. Let's agree to a nickname that we could all call you. It's, in other words, I understand you're struggling with your name given at birth. I understand your parents struggle with the idea of you being called this. Could we come to some consensus together? And I love that kind of heart behind that. But in terms of how you do that specifically, I think when you're talking about this being your niece, you want to, you're not her therapist, you're not her pastor or counselor. Holding relationship is probably most critical, but I don't know exactly how you should do that. I really don't.
Any input, Brian?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I would say is I think you have to just take each situation individually and, prayerfully just see how to navigate it. I think generally speaking, obviously, we do not believe that boys can become girls and girls can become boys. We think that is delusional. but it's a delusion that has captured the minds of otherwise sane people. I was just watching a clip today where, this guy, I think he must have been before Congress, and, he's a big medical guy, and, when asked about, can men have children, he said, well, mostly women do have babies. Mostly, yeah. And, this is a guy who's like, he's not just a doctor, but, he's like the head of a whole department or something. And I just thought, wow, how has it come to the point where somebody who I guarantee 15 years ago, this guy never, ever would have dreamed that you would even be asked a question like that. And I'm sure he never would have dreamed that he would give an answer like that. But it just shows how powerful that these ideologies are, that they actually just take over people's minds and rob them of, the common sense to just state the obvious. It's really quite frightening. So I think in each case, it's tough. These are the tough things. And so I don't think, because you hear people that are dogmatic both ways. You hear people that are like, absolutely you need to respect the person. They want to be called this, and you, out of respect for them, you need to call them that. And then there's the other person that says, you absolutely should not. They're delusional, and you don't want to support their delusion. And I don't think that we should be that fixed on how we navigate it. I think, like so many things in life, we need to be in the moment with the Spirit, asking God for wisdom on what to do, because everybody's different, everybody's different. And our goal, of course, is to bring people to faith in Jesus. So what's the best way to navigate a conversation that's going to get you to the point of being able to share the gospel? I think that's a question that we want to ask when we're approaching these kinds of things.
Phil?
Yeah, that's so good. I was just thinking of one of my youngest daughters. One of her friends went through a phase of like wanting to be referred to as they, them.
Yeah,
that whole thing. And of course, I get it. In English, it's such a big deal. Like we make because we have all these personal pronouns. A lot of languages, pronouns are like the same. Like he, she, it is this. Like in Hungarian, he, she, it is the same. There's no. So you're never like. There's no argument happening in like Hungary about the personal pronoun. Like. You're just a it anyways. You're kind of a they, them, like that's the formal way of speaking to each other. But I just thinking about my daughter's friend who's she's a dear friend to all of us. And that's not as the case for her anymore. But I realized like, just by like some respect and talking about it, talk to me about this. Why are we, like, you're my friend, I'm just curious, like, and it cost me nothing. It cost me nothing to be kind and to just ask some questions and to try to understand. And I think, if we would all, like, again, that's a situation where I was glad to get it right. I got into these things wrong a gazillion times, but when you do get it right, you just lean into what you just said, Brian, which is like, just be led by the Spirit for each situation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Maria, for sending in your question through the Pastor's Perspective page at kwave.com. 888-564-6173 is our number. Here's another Facebook question. This one was sent by Robert in Dana Point. He says he saw this, I think he saw this on a non-believer's social media, so he forwarded it to us, and he's like, how would you answer this person? And their post says, so you're telling me some God has always existed and one day decided to make a couple of humans out of dirt and bone, curse them and everyone else that would ever exist after they had a forbidden fruit snack, even though he knew in advance they would do that, and then a couple thousand years later sent his son, who is also himself, to provide a blood sacrifice to himself, and we have to believe that all of this happened, or we go to hell where his adversary somehow wants to punish us for joining his side. How would you respond if you guys saw that? Or if you were having a conversation with someone, let's say it wasn't on social media, because on social media you could just keep scrolling. But and there might even be someone listening who believes all that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you just need to slow down a little bit and kind of take, there's a lot of things there. He offers a sacrifice to himself, or whatever it was said there. You would have to, talk about the Trinity. You'd have to talk about God as one person, or one being, but exists in three distinct persons, and that's why when Jesus is offering himself as a sacrifice, he's not offering himself as a sacrifice to himself in that sense. He's offering himself as a sacrifice to God, who requires a payment for sin. Yes, there is a penalty for sin, just like there's penalties for law breaking in human society. So there are penalties for breaking God's law beyond human society. I'm not even remembering what the first part of the question was, but I'm just thinking of let's talk about justice, for example. Let's talk about just the classic Adolf Hitler example. Still to date, Hitler is kind of seen as the most evil person in the history of the world. But I guess I'm wrong about that, because some people are actually liking Hitler these days, which is pretty insane. But for the rational people who know that Hitler was pretty much the devil incarnate, so should we think that this man, who was directly responsible for the death of millions of people and indirectly responsible for, maybe 10 times more people than that this guy there's no justice, that there's no accountability, that there's no answering for these crimes. He just lives and dies, and that's the end of it. I don't believe that. I think that we all have a sense that when wrong is committed, that there needs to be something done about it. There needs to be justice. So going back to God, God is faced with an entire humanity that has lived in sin and rebellion against him, and in violating his laws have violated their fellow human beings like Hitler did. And I don't find that that's all that difficult to believe that there's a judgment. Mm. What's the question about judgment? It seemed like it was to some degree. Maybe I'm just answering a question.
Yeah, there were.
Who's he answering?
I think this is a make-believe person anyway.
Yeah, this is like the songs you are humming all the time.
Yeah. So what was the question again?
There were a lot. There was a lot in there.
There was a lot.
But
but it was the idea that God is unfair, and God is, how dare God do this? And he, and if I don't believe that he sacrificed himself, then I'm going to go to hell and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Phil, any thoughts?
Yeah. You definitely answered his question. That was just funny how in the end you're like, wait, what was the question? I love that. Because it was so passionate. It was such a passionate answer. And then like, wait, what was the question? I was thinking, and I thought to me, that's a very gracious response, in the sense of you're giving that person a little bit more credibility to what they're asking than I would have. And also since it's just a write-in, they should have called and I would have been nicer. But since it's a write-in, I don't have to be. I could say it like it is, in the sense, here's the reality. That's such an I don't mean educated like a formal, it's an unintelligent reaction to the whole story of the gospel. It's a very, very, it's a very biased and unintelligent. Here's what I mean. Just consider the number of people who have sought to discredit the gospel and the Bible. Just think, very intelligent people have made it their life's goal to show that the Bible is false, and that the idea that the narrative of the story of God is wrong. And we have more accounts of those people coming to faith in Christ. At the very least, we see that people at the upper echelons of intelligence, for the most part these days, acknowledge the discrepancies in their science or in their naturalistic views, and can understand where faith becomes something to consider. My point is this. that person's reaction is more like that they've had a bad experience to the idea of Christianity than it is like a truly like thoughtful approach to the story of God. That's not a thoughtful approach. If you want to be thoughtful, a lot of people have done that and they ended up coming to faith in Christ.
Thank you, Robert, for sending in that post that you saw online. 888-564-6173 is our number. Let's do one more that was sent in online before we go to the break. This is from Ezekiel, or before we end the show. The break, the 23-hour break.
A long break.
Yes, a very long break. Ezekiel 22 is where you guys got to turn for this one. And Robert in Duarte, listening on AM 1110, wants to know verses 17 through 22 in Ezekiel 22. Is this a group of verses related to the future fate of the house of Israel? Are you familiar with that passage off the top of your head?
Ezekiel what? 22?
Ezekiel 22.
No, I'm not. I'm sorry to say.
That's the portion you haven't memorized yet.
Ezekiel has a lot of chapters in it, and
yes,
they can get kind of blurred. But chapter 22, I do think that is the chapter where God is, they're talking about the curse on the house of
Jerusalem.
Yeah, but what's the king, that he will no longer have, a descendant to follow after him. Jeconiah, cursed is it Jeconiah?
I don't know. I don't see, what verses was he looking at?
17 through 22.
Son of the house of Brian. I don't see Jeconiah's name in here.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe it's... Okay, maybe we're going to run out of time and we're...
Yeah, and then we'll be like, and that's all I have to say about that. What was his question? I don't even remember the question anymore. What did he want to...
Again? This happened again. So he wanted to know if this group of verses is related to the future fate of the house of Israel.
Okay, so looking at the chapter in a kind of a flyover, these chapters here are really primarily dealing with the judgment that is happening during Ezekiel's time, because Ezekiel's in Babylon. He's been carried away to Babylon. And Nebuchadnezzar is ultimately going to destroy the city. So I would say that the context is more during the time of Ezekiel.
Phil?
Agreed.
Did you find anything out?
No, I saw the same thing. That's what it looks like. It's during that time.
Thank you so much for submitting your question online, and we've got to go. Thank you so much for joining us today on Pastor's Perspective. We're going to archive today's episode on Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and then we'll be back tomorrow between 3 and 4. Start calling about 7 minutes before 3, and hopefully we'll talk to you then. For Brian Broderson and Phil Metzger, I'm Brian Perez. Thanks for watching and listening to Pastor's Perspective.